I never thought my world could collapse with one phone call. The voice on the other end belonged to Jackson, my husband of 8 years. But his words felt like they came from a stranger. I was at work when he called to tell me he wanted a divorce. No explanation, no face-to-face conversation. Just a cold instruction to contact his lawyer from now on. I agreed to meet this lawyer, completely unaware that walking into that office would change everything. Jackson and I met in graduate school. I was studying healthcare administration while he pursued his MBA. We connected immediately over our ambitious career plans and shared love of hiking the Appalachian trails. After dating for 2 years, we married in a small ceremony with just our closest friends and family. I was 24 then, young and full of dreams about our future together. Fast forward 8 years, and I had established myself as a respected administrator at Atlanta Memorial Hospital. Jackson had climbed the corporate ladder to become the CFO of TechVision, a growing software company that specialized in healthcare applications. On paper, we were living the American dream. We had recently purchased a beautiful 4-bedroom house in a leafy suburb of Atlanta, complete with the wrap-around porch I had always wanted. For the past 2 years, we had been trying to have a baby. Month after month of disappointment had taken its toll on both of us. I charted temperatures, scheduled intimacy, and took countless pregnancy tests, all ending with the same heartbreaking result. Despite the emotional roller coaster, Jackson had seemed supportive. He held me through tearful nights and reassured me that we would keep trying for as long as it took. 2 weeks before that devastating phone call, we had shared what would be our last happy dinner together. Jackson had brought home takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant, along with a bouquet of yellow tulips. We sat on our porch swing, eating pad Thai, and talking about potentially exploring adoption if pregnancy didn't happen naturally. He seemed engaged, loving, present. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have such a supportive partner through this difficult journey. But looking back, there were subtle changes in his behavior that I had dismissed. Over the past month, Jackson had grown increasingly distant. He started working later than usual, often not coming home until after I was asleep. His phone, once casually left around the house, was now password protected. When I asked about it, he claimed it was a new company security policy. The frequency of his business trips increased, with extensions added at the last minute. Just a quick text message saying he needed to stay 2 more days in Chicago or Seattle. I found receipts for restaurants far more expensive than the places he typically expense for client meetings. Once, I discovered a charge for a high-end jewelry store in Boston during a week he was supposedly in Denver. Each time I tried to discuss these inconsistencies, Jackson had a plausible explanation. The restaurant was a special request from an important client. The jewelry store charge was a birthday gift for his mother that he wanted to keep a surprise. I chose to believe him because the alternative was too painful to consider. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was running late for work but remembered I needed to take my regular pregnancy test as part of our ongoing fertility tracking. I expected the same disappointing single line I had seen dozens of times before. But this time, a second faint pink line appeared. I took 3 more tests from different boxes, all positive. After years of trying, of temperature charting and disappointment, of tears and frustration, I was finally pregnant. I sat on the bathroom floor, hands shaking, joy and disbelief flooding through me. I wanted to call Jackson immediately, but decided to wait and tell him in person that evening. I imagined his face lighting up with the news we had waited so long to share. I went to work floating on a cloud of happiness, completely unprepared for the call that would come just hours later. The call came at 2:15 in the afternoon. I was in my office reviewing staffing schedules when my cell phone lit up with Jackson's name. Smiling, I answered eagerly, still carrying the secret joy of my morning discovery. Chastity, his voice was flat, emotionless, completely unlike the man I knew. I need to tell you something important. There was something in his tone that made my stomach drop. What is it? Is everything okay? I want a divorce. The words came without preamble, without emotion, as if he were discussing a business transaction. What? I felt like I had been physically struck. Jackson, what are you talking about? We were just discussing adoption options 2 weeks ago. My mind is made up, he continued in that same detached tone. I've already moved my things out while you were at work today. I won't be coming back to the house. My hand clutched the edge of my desk as the room seemed to tilt around me. You moved out? Without even talking to me? Jackson, this makes no sense. If there are problems, we can work through them. We can get counseling. There's nothing to discuss. My lawyer will be in touch regarding the division of assets. You can contact him with any questions you have. Your lawyer? I repeated, disbelief making it hard to form thoughts. You want me to talk to your lawyer instead of you? We've been married for 8 years, Jackson. It's better this way. Cleaner. There was a shuffling of papers in the background. His name is Martin Blackwell, with Blackwell and Associates. You can schedule a meeting with him next week. I deserve more than this, I said, my voice breaking. I deserve to know why. The lawyer will handle everything from here. Goodbye, Chastity. The line went dead. I sat frozen, staring at my phone, unable to process what had just happened. Tears filled my eyes as I tried to make sense of the conversation. The pregnancy test from that morning sat in my purse, a cruel reminder of the future we had been planning together, now shattered in a 2-minute phone call. I left work immediately, telling my assistant I had a family emergency. The 20-minute drive home was a blur of tears and confusion. Had I missed something? Was there someone else? How could he just walk away without explanation after 8 years? When I pulled into our driveway, everything looked normal from the outside. Our house still stood welcoming and solid. The hanging baskets of ferns I had planted still swayed gently on the porch. But inside, the evidence of Jackson's departure was everywhere. His closet was empty, hangers dangling where his suits and casual clothes had been. The bathroom counter, usually cluttered with his cologne, razor, and hair products, was bare. His nightstand had been cleaned out. Even his favorite coffee mug was gone from the kitchen cabinet. I moved through the house in a daze, cataloging each absence. In his home office, I found drawers partially open, files missing. When I opened his desk drawer, I discovered a document I had never seen before, a prenuptial agreement with what appeared to be my signature at the bottom. I stared at it in shock. I had no memory of ever signing such a document. With shaking hands, I picked up the phone and called Amanda, who had been a bridesmaid at our wedding and remained one of our closest friends. She answered on the 4th ring. Chastity, hi, she said, her voice unusually hesitant. Amanda, something terrible has happened. Jackson just called me out of nowhere and said he wants a divorce. He's already moved out. I don't understand what's going on. There was a long pause. Oh, Chastity, I'm so sorry. Did you know about this? Has he said anything to you or Brad? Another pause. We should talk in person. I can't really discuss this right now. What do you mean you can't discuss it? Amanda, I'm falling apart here. I'm really sorry, but I need to go. I'll call you later. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Amanda's strange behavior added another layer of confusion to this nightmare. I tried calling 2 other couple friends with the same result: awkward conversations, quick excuses, and promises to call back later that I somehow knew would not be kept. Desperate for answers, I logged into our joint bank account. The balance was much lower than it should have been. I checked the transaction history and found a large withdrawal made 3 days ago, removing nearly $70,000 from our joint savings. Another withdrawal had been made from our checking account yesterday, leaving just enough to cover outstanding bills. I checked our joint credit cards next. All 3 had been canceled. When I called the credit card company, they informed me that the cards had been canceled by the primary account holder yesterday. As the evening wore on, I discovered more evidence that Jackson had been planning this for months. In a folder hidden in his desk, I found a rental agreement for an apartment downtown, dated 6 weeks earlier. There were also bank statements for accounts I didn't recognize, showing substantial deposits over the past 4 months. I fell asleep on the couch at dawn, emotionally exhausted, with one thought repeating in my mind. This wasn't an impulsive decision. My husband had been methodically planning his exit from our marriage while continuing to share my bed, discuss our future, and try for a baby. The calculated cruelty of it was almost harder to bear than the abandonment itself. I woke up the next morning hoping it had all been a nightmare. The pregnancy tests were still in my purse. A bittersweet reminder that life was continuing to grow inside me even as my marriage crumbled around me. My first instinct was to call my sister Taylor. Taylor had always been my rock. 3 years older and infinitely more practical than me, she had weathered her own divorce 2 years earlier, when her husband of 5 years cheated with his secretary, a cliché that had made Taylor roll her eyes even through her tears. He did what? Taylor's voice rose in disbelief when I recounted yesterday's events. That coward called you at work and refused to give you any explanation? And he's already moved out? Yes, and there's more. My voice cracked. I'm pregnant, Taylor. After all this time trying, it finally happened. I just found out yesterday morning before his call. I was going to surprise him with the news last night. There was silence on the other end of the line. Oh, Chastity, I'm so sorry. What absolute awful timing. Another pause. Have you told him about the baby? No. I curled up tighter on the couch. He made it clear he doesn't want to talk to me directly, only through his lawyer. That's not right. He needs to know. I don't know what to do, Taylor. I found a prenup in his desk that I don't remember signing. He's emptied most of our accounts. Our friends are avoiding my calls. Pack a bag. You're coming to stay with me for a few days while we figure this out. Taylor's voice shifted from sympathetic to determined. And we need to get you a lawyer immediately. My friend Darlene works as a paralegal for a good family law attorney. I'll call her right now. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Taylor's apartment, nursing a cup of ginger tea to help with the morning sickness that had decided to make an appearance. Taylor sat across from me with a notepad, making lists of what needed to be done. Darlene says the first thing you need to do is gather all financial documents, Taylor explained. Bank statements, tax returns, investment accounts, retirement accounts, anything financial for the past 5 years if possible. I nodded numbly. And she says don't tell anyone about the pregnancy yet, not even Jackson. It could complicate the legal strategy. But he deserves to know he's going to be a father, I protested. Taylor's expression hardened. The man who planned his exit for months while pretending everything was fine? The man who canceled your credit cards and emptied your savings? That man has forfeited his right to consideration right now. We need to protect you and the baby first. She was right, of course. I spent the rest of the day going through online accounts and making copies of whatever financial documents I could access remotely. The picture that emerged was disturbing. Over the past 6 months, Jackson had been systematically moving assets around. His direct deposits had stopped going into our joint account 3 months ago. Investment accounts I thought we held together turned out to be in his name only. That evening, I received a strange call from Peter, who worked in accounting at Jackson's company. Chastity, I hope I'm not overstepping, he said hesitantly. Jackson doesn't know I'm calling you. We've met at company functions a few times, and you were always kind to me. What's this about, Peter? There have been some unusual financial movements at the company recently. Jackson has been directing funds in ways that don't seem to follow proper protocols. I'm concerned about what's happening, and when I heard you two were separating so suddenly, it raised some red flags for me. My pulse quickened. What kind of financial movements? I can't give specifics over the phone, but if you're meeting with a lawyer soon, you might want to suggest they look into TechVision's financial statements for the past year. There are inconsistencies that don't add up. The call ended with Peter promising to reach out again if he learned anything else. I immediately told Taylor about the conversation. "This is getting more interesting," she said, a determined glint in her eye. "Let's do some research on this lawyer of Jackson's." We spent the next hour searching online for information about Martin Blackwell. What we found was concerning. While his firm had a glossy website and impressive client list, there were several complaints lodged with the State Bar Association regarding ethical concerns. Nothing had resulted in formal discipline, but the pattern was troubling. "I'm going to call Darlene again," Taylor said. "You need your own lawyer yesterday." The next morning, I returned home to gather more documents. As I was searching through our home office, I noticed Jackson had left his old laptop. He had upgraded to a new one 2 months ago, but had kept the old one as a backup. On a hunch, I powered it up. The laptop asked for a password. I tried our anniversary, his birthday, and several other combinations with no success. Finally, out of frustration, I typed divorce, and to my surprise, the screen unlocked. I immediately checked his cloud backup, which was still logged in. There, in a folder named Personal, I found dozens of photos of Jackson with another woman. In many of them, they were clearly intimate, arms around each other, kissing in one. But what made my blood run cold was a more recent photo where the woman was visibly pregnant, perhaps 5 or 6 months along. Jackson stood behind her, hands cradling her belly, a proud smile on his face. I stared at the image, unable to process what I was seeing. Based on the woman's pregnancy progression, this relationship had been going on for at least 7 months, possibly longer. All while Jackson and I were still actively trying to conceive a child of our own. The betrayal cut so deep I could barely breathe. I forwarded the photos to my email and continued searching the laptop. In his downloads folder, I found what appeared to be emails between Jackson and his boss, William Thompson, discussing what they referred to as the arrangement. The context was vague, but there were mentions of offshore accounts and keeping things quiet until after the merger. I didn't understand all the implications, but one thing was becoming clear. Jackson's abandonment of our marriage might be connected to something bigger and potentially illegal happening at his company. And somehow, this pregnant woman was involved. I took photos of everything I found, sent copies to my email, and then carefully put the laptop back exactly as I had found it. My hands were shaking, but my mind was suddenly clear. This wasn't just about a failing marriage anymore. Whatever Jackson was involved in, it was big enough that he was willing to throw away 8 years of marriage to protect it. And I was determined to find out why. Over the next 3 days, I prepared for battle. Through Taylor's friend Darlene, I secured a consultation with Patricia Winters, one of Atlanta's top divorce attorneys. I brought everything I had gathered so far, the prenup I didn't remember signing, the financial documents showing Jackson's systematic withdrawal of funds, and the photos of him with the pregnant woman. Patricia's office was warm and inviting. Nothing like the intimidating corporate space I imagined Jackson's lawyer worked in. She listened attentively as I laid out the timeline of events, occasionally taking notes. "The prenup concerns me," she said, examining the document. "You say you have no memory of signing this?" "None whatsoever. Jackson never even mentioned wanting a prenup before we got married. We were both starting our careers then. Neither of us had significant assets to protect." Patricia studied the signature. "This doesn't match the signature on your driver's license or other legal documents you've shown me. I'd like to have a handwriting expert examine this." "Is that possible?" "Absolutely. If this signature was forged, the entire prenup is invalid. But even if you did sign it, prenups can be challenged, especially if there was deception involved." "Did he disclose all his assets at the time?" "I don't believe so. And again, I have no memory of this document at all." Patricia nodded. "Now, regarding these financial transactions you've documented, moving assets before filing for divorce is often an attempt to hide them from equitable distribution. That's not looked upon favorably by the courts. We spent the next hour outlining a strategy. Patricia advised me to continue gathering evidence, but to do so carefully. Do not confront Jackson directly. Let him think you're in the dark. And do keep that meeting with his lawyer as scheduled next week. We want to hear what they're offering before showing our hand. Following Patricia's advice, I went to the bank the next morning and opened a new account in my name only. I transferred half of the remaining funds from our joint checking account, the money Jackson had left behind to cover bills. I also ordered copies of all bank statements for the past 5 years. That afternoon, I met with Peter from Jackson's company at a coffee shop 20 miles from my house to avoid being seen by anyone who might know us. I've been looking more closely at the books, Peter said in a low voice, constantly glancing around. There's a pattern of funds being diverted to a subsidiary company that seems to exist only on paper. And Jackson isn't the only one involved. William Thompson, the CEO, is directing most of it. The CEO is involved? What exactly are they doing? It looks like embezzlement to me, but carefully disguised as legitimate business expenses. They've been siphoning off investor funds meant for product development. Millions of dollars over the past year. And do you know anything about a woman connected to William Thompson? Possibly pregnant? Peter's eyes widened. That would be Amanda Thompson, William's daughter. She joined the company about 10 months ago as Director of Special Projects, though nobody seems to know exactly what she does. And yes, she's very pregnant. The rumor is she's due in about 2 months. The pieces started falling into place. The woman in the photos with Jackson was his boss's daughter. I pulled up one of the images on my phone and showed it to Peter. Is this her? He nodded. That's Amanda. Wait, is she with Jackson in these? Are they together? It appears so. For at least 7 or 8 months, based on these photos. Peter looked genuinely shocked. I had no idea. This adds a whole new dimension to what's happening at the company. We parted ways with Peter, promising to compile whatever evidence he could safely access. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. Was Jackson leaving me to be with Amanda? Was he being pressured by William Thompson because of the relationship with his daughter? Or was this all connected to the apparent financial fraud happening at TechVision? The next day, I made 2 important discoveries. First, I found a receipt for a hotel room in Savannah from 3 weeks ago when Jackson claimed to be at a conference in Dallas. Second, while going through old mail, I discovered a notification about a life insurance policy Jackson had taken out on me 6 months ago, something I had no knowledge of. The policy was for $1 million, an amount that seemed excessive and alarming given everything else I was learning. I immediately called the insurance company and confirmed that yes, such a policy existed, with Jackson as the sole beneficiary. I requested a copy of the application form, which they agreed to send. With Taylor's help, I created a detailed inventory of everything missing from our home. Beyond his personal effects, Jackson had taken several valuable items, including an antique watch my grandfather had left me, a collection of rare first edition books we had collected together, and a small painting by a local artist that had quadrupled in value since we purchased it. Throughout all this, I was struggling with intense morning sickness, often having to pause my investigation to deal with waves of nausea. Taylor was a constant support, bringing me ginger tea and crackers, reminding me to eat small meals, and making sure I took my prenatal vitamins. The pregnancy that should have been a time of joy had become another complication in an already overwhelming situation. 6 days after Jackson's devastating phone call, I received an email from Martin Blackwell's office confirming our appointment for the following morning at 10. The email was cold and formal, with detailed instructions about where to park and which floor to go to, as if I were a client rather than the wife of a client. That night, Taylor helped me prepare for the meeting. We role-played various scenarios, with her taking the part of the aggressive lawyer trying to intimidate me. Remember, she said, as we finished our practice session, They're expecting you to be emotional and easy to manipulate. Your greatest weapon tomorrow is staying calm and revealing nothing about what you know. Let them show their hand first. I nodded, my hand unconsciously moving to my still flat stomach. I'm ready. Just as I was about to go to bed, my phone pinged with an email from Peter. The subject line read simply, "Found something big." The body of the email contained only an attachment, a series of spreadsheets and emails that appeared to document not just embezzlement, but a complex scheme involving inflated contracts, kickbacks, and what looked like blackmail. And there, in an email from William Thompson to Jackson dated just 2 weeks ago, was the smoking gun. J. Given Amanda's condition and the timeline we've discussed, I expect you to finalize your personal situation immediately. Once the Meridian merger is complete, we'll all be set. Remember our agreement, your silence and cooperation, guarantee your position, and share. Clean break, no complications. WT. I forwarded everything to Patricia with a quick note explaining what I'd found, then tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow's meeting with Martin Blackwell had just taken on a whole new dimension. I was no longer walking in as a discarded wife, but as someone with leverage I wasn't sure they knew I possessed. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a strange calm replacing the hurt and confusion of the past week. Jackson and his lawyer thought I was coming in as a victim. They had no idea I was actually arriving as their worst nightmare. The offices of Blackwell and Associates occupied the top floor of a gleaming glass tower in downtown Atlanta. The reception area was all sleek marble and chrome, designed to intimidate visitors before they even met any attorneys. The receptionist, a perfectly coiffed blonde who looked barely out of college, gave me a once-over as I approached her desk. I have an appointment with Martin Blackwell at 10. Chastity Lawson. Something flickered across her face, recognition perhaps, or discomfort. Yes, Miss Lawson. Please have a seat. Mr. Blackwell is running a few minutes behind schedule. I settled into one of the uncomfortable modern chairs, noticing how the reception area was arranged so visitors sat lower than the receptionist. Another subtle power play. The few minutes stretched into 30. Another common tactic to unnerve people before important meetings. Finally, the receptionist led me down a long hallway to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlanta skyline. Martin Blackwell stood as I entered, a tall man with silver hair and an expensive suit that practically screamed success. Miss Lawson, thank you for coming. He didn't extend his hand, instead gesturing to a chair across from his imposing desk. Can I offer you coffee or water? Water, please. My mouth had gone dry, despite all my preparation. A young associate brought water, and then hovered near the door until Blackwell dismissed him with a nod. Then he turned his attention fully to me, studying me with cold calculation. I understand this is a difficult time, he began, his tone suggesting he found divorce discussions tedious rather than emotionally charged. But I assure you, we can make this process relatively painless if you cooperate. Cooperate in what way, Mr. Blackwell? I asked, keeping my voice steady. He opened a folder on his desk. I have here a settlement proposal prepared on behalf of my client, Jackson Lawson. Given the prenuptial agreement you signed before your marriage, the terms are quite generous. He slid a document across the desk. I glanced at it briefly, noting the insulting figures without reacting. According to this proposal, I would vacate our home within 30 days, receive a one-time payment of $50,000, and relinquish all claims to any other marital assets or Jackson's retirement accounts. Your client seems eager to conclude this matter quickly, I observed. Yes. Well, these situations are always best resolved efficiently. Blackwell gave me what I assumed was his practiced, sympathetic smile. I understand this must be shocking to you. Sometimes marriages simply run their course. Before we discuss this proposal, I said carefully, I'd like to clarify a few points. I'm meeting with you today because my husband insisted I speak only to his lawyer. Is that correct? Blackwell shifted slightly. Mr. Lawson felt it would be less emotional for all parties if the details were handled through legal counsel. Yes, I see. And for the record, you are representing Jackson Lawson in divorce proceedings against me, his wife of 8 years. Is that also correct? Something in my tone made him pause. Yes, that's correct. I am representing Mr. Lawson in this matter. I leaned forward slightly. So to be absolutely clear, yes, I am the wife. The change in Blackwell's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. His face paled, and his hand, which had been reaching for another document, began to visibly tremble. He quickly pulled it back and placed it under the desk, out of sight. Miss Lawson, he began, his voice noticeably less confident. Perhaps we should reschedule this meeting. I've just recalled a conflicting appointment that requires my attention. How strange, I replied calmly. You seemed quite available just moments ago. Does your sudden unavailability have anything to do with this? I removed a folder from my purse and placed it on his desk, but kept my hand on it. What is that? He eyed the folder warily. Documentation I believe you'll find interesting. It includes evidence that the prenuptial agreement my husband claims I signed is a forgery. It also contains records of financial transactions showing my husband has been systematically hiding assets for months in preparation for this divorce. Blackwell's shaking had become more pronounced. These are serious allegations that would need to be verified. Oh, there's more, I continued, my confidence growing as his diminished. I also have evidence suggesting my husband and his boss, William Thompson, have been embezzling from their company TechVision, and that my husband is romantically involved with Thompson's pregnant daughter, Amanda. At the mention of Amanda Thompson's name, Blackwell actually flinched. Miss Lawson, I'm not sure what you think you know, but making unfounded accusations, they're not unfounded, Mr. Blackwell, and I think you know that. I opened the folder and turned it so he could see the top document, an email exchange between him and Jackson, discussing how to hide certain assets from the wife that Peter had uncovered. This appears to show you advising my husband on how to conceal marital assets. That's not just unethical, it's illegal, isn't it? Blackwell's face had gone from pale to ashen. Where did you get that? That's not important. What matters is that I have it, along with much more, including evidence that you've been helping William Thompson with questionable legal maneuvers related to the upcoming Meridian merger. The lawyer reached for his water glass with a trembling hand, nearly knocking it over before managing to take a sip. Miss Lawson, perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I think it would be in everyone's best interest if we took a step back and... I'm not interested in stepping back, Mr. Blackwell. I'm interested in justice. I leaned forward, meeting his eyes directly. I want to know exactly what's going on, and I want to know now. Why is my husband suddenly abandoning our 8-year marriage? What is his involvement with William and Amanda Thompson? And what exactly is happening with this Meridian merger that requires my husband to get a clean break from me? Blackwell stared at me for a long moment, visibly calculating his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped slightly. This is a complex situation, Miss Lawson. One with serious implications for many people, including your husband. I'm listening. He sighed deeply. The merger between TechVision and Meridian Health Systems is worth potentially billions, but there are complications. Financial irregularities that would come to light during Meridian's due diligence process. The embezzlement, I stated flatly. He winced at the word. Creative accounting would be a more accurate term. William Thompson has been diverting company funds for years to support various personal interests. Your husband became aware of this shortly after becoming CFO, but was persuaded to participate. Persuaded how? Initially with financial incentives. Later, when he expressed concerns about continuing the arrangement, with threats to implicate him if everything fell apart. Blackwell paused. Then Amanda entered the picture. She and Jackson began an affair approximately 10 months ago. When she became pregnant, William saw an opportunity to solidify Jackson's cooperation. By pressuring him to marry his daughter, the pieces were falling into place. Yes. Once Jackson is divorced from you and married to Amanda, he'll be family. The pregnancy timeline is problematic. Amanda is due in less than 2 months. They need your marriage dissolved quickly and quietly to avoid any question of the child's paternity or legitimacy. I felt physically ill, and not just from the morning sickness. So my husband has been ordered to discard me so he can marry his boss's daughter and help cover up financial crimes. That's a rather blunt assessment, but essentially correct. Blackwell had the grace to look uncomfortable. The settlement offer was designed to make this go away quickly. Jackson has been promised a significant position and ownership stake post-merger if everything proceeds smoothly. And what about me? Did anyone consider what this would do to me? For the first time, Blackwell seemed genuinely remorseful. I don't believe so, Miss Lawson. In situations like this, collateral damage is rarely given much consideration. Collateral damage. I repeated the words slowly, feeling a cold anger replace my shock. That's what I am to all of you. Collateral damage in your corporate schemes. What do you intend to do with this information? Blackwell asked quietly. I gathered my folder and stood up. That depends on what happens next. I'll be in touch, Mr. Blackwell. I suggest you think very carefully about where your loyalties lie moving forward. As I walked out of his office, back straight and head high, I could feel his eyes on me. I had come into this meeting expecting to be intimidated and dismissed. Instead, I had turned the tables completely. Martin Blackwell, the polished, powerful attorney who had expected to steamroll a devastated wife, was now the one shaking in his expensive leather chair. The following morning, I met with Patricia to report everything I had learned from Martin Blackwell. She listened with increasing alarm as I detailed the scheme involving Jackson, the Thompsons, and the merger. This is no longer just a divorce case, she said when I finished. This involves securities fraud, potentially wire fraud, and conspiracy. We need to approach this carefully. What do you recommend? I asked. First, we need to secure your position. Based on what you've told me, your husband and his associates are desperate to conclude this divorce quickly. That gives us leverage, but it also makes them dangerous. The life insurance policy particularly concerns me. I hadn't even considered the more sinister implications of that policy. You think Jackson might. I don't know what he might do, but $1 million policy on a spouse he's planning to leave, taken out just months before filing for divorce, raises serious red flags. I'm calling in a friend at the district attorney's office. This needs official attention. By that afternoon, I was sitting in a conference room with Patricia, an assistant district attorney named Jared Willis, and an SEC investigator. I provided copies of everything I had gathered, including the emails Peter had sent me documenting the financial irregularities at TechVision. This is compelling evidence of securities fraud, the SEC investigator said, flipping through the documents. With the pending merger, they're potentially defrauding Meridian's shareholders as well as their own. And the prenup forgery gives us grounds for wire fraud charges, Jared added. Not to mention potential conspiracy charges for everyone involved in hiding assets. What about Jackson and the Thompsons? I asked. What happens to them? If this evidence holds up, they're looking at serious criminal charges, Jared explained. Federal charges, with significant prison time. The thought of Jackson in prison gave me no satisfaction. Despite everything, I couldn't erase 8 years of love so quickly. But I also couldn't ignore his betrayal or the calculated way he had planned to discard me. What do you need from me? I asked. Cooperation, the SEC investigator replied. We need to build this case carefully. For now, you should continue as if you know nothing. Let them think their plan is working. Over the next 2 weeks, I played my part carefully. I responded to emails from Blackwell's office with appropriate confusion and distress. I asked for more time to consider their settlement offer citing emotional turmoil. Meanwhile, I continued gathering evidence. I arranged a seemingly chance encounter with Amanda Thompson at a restaurant near TechVision's offices, striking up a conversation about her pregnancy while pretending not to know who she was. She was clearly uncomfortable but too polite to walk away immediately. "When are you due?" I asked with practiced innocence. "About 6 weeks," she replied, one hand protectively covering her belly. "Your first?" "Yes." A tight smile. The father must be so excited. Something flickered across her face, guilt or discomfort. "Yes, he is. Very involved." I smiled warmly. "That's wonderful. So many men check out during pregnancy. My husband and I have been trying for years without success. It's been heartbreaking." Amanda's face paled slightly. "I'm sorry to hear that. I should really get going." "Of course. Best of luck with everything." I watched her hurry away, wondering if she knew exactly who I was and what Jackson had done. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Jackson himself, the first direct contact since his divorce announcement. "Chastity, why are you dragging this out?" His voice was tense, angry. "Just sign the settlement papers." "Hello to you too, Jackson. Nice to finally hear from you after you abandoned our marriage with a phone call. Look, I'm trying to be reasonable here. The settlement is generous considering the prenup. The prenup I supposedly signed but have no memory of? That prenup?" There was a pause. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm explicitly stating that I never signed a prenuptial agreement, and I think you know that." Another longer pause. "Chastity, don't make this more difficult than it needs to be. There's nothing to gain by fighting this. Nothing except what's rightfully mine after 8 years of marriage. Nothing except the truth about why my husband suddenly wants out of our life together with no explanation. It's not that simple." "Then explain it to me, Jackson. You owe me that much." I heard him exhale slowly. "I can't discuss this on the phone. Meet me tomorrow at 4. The coffee shop on Peachtree where we used to go on Sunday mornings. I'll be there." After hanging up, I immediately called Jared at the district attorney's office. He arranged for a discreet recording device and instructed me on how to get Jackson to incriminate himself without alerting him to the investigation. The coffee shop was nearly empty when I arrived the next day. Jackson was already there, seated at a corner table, looking thinner and more haggard than I remembered. For a moment, seeing him again sent a wave of confused emotions through me: anger, hurt, and despite everything, a trace of the love we had shared for 8 years. "Thank you for coming," he said as I sat down across from him. "You didn't leave me much choice." I studied his face, searching for the man I thought I knew. "Why, Jackson? After 8 years, why end our marriage with a phone call? Why empty our accounts and cancel our credit cards? Why pretend we were still trying for a baby when you were already involved with someone else?" He looked down at his coffee. "It's complicated. Uncomplicate it for me. I got involved in something I shouldn't have, at the company. William Thompson has been running schemes for years, manipulating the books, diverting funds. When I became CFO, I discovered what was happening, but instead of reporting it, I let him bring me in. Why would you do that? That's not the man I married. The man you married was ambitious and wanted to be successful. William offered opportunities I couldn't get otherwise. It started small, just looking the other way on certain transactions. Then it grew. And Amanda? How does she fit into all this?" Jackson's expression changed, a mixture of shame and something else, something that looked disturbingly like pride. "Amanda and I, it wasn't planned. We started working closely together on projects. One thing led to another. While you were still coming home to me every night, while we were still trying to conceive a child." He had the decency to wince. "I'm not proud of how I handled things." "And now she's pregnant." "Yes, about 7 months along. And William Thompson is pressuring you to marry his daughter to legitimize his grandchild and secure your silence about the financial fraud. Jackson's head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. How did you? Did you really think I'd just roll over and accept being discarded, Jackson? That I wouldn't ask questions or look for answers? I'm not the naive fool you clearly took me for. Chastity, you don't understand how dangerous this situation is. William Thompson is not someone you want to cross. That's why I tried to keep you out of it, to give you a clean break and enough money to start over. $50,000 after 8 years of marriage, while you take millions in hidden assets and a position in the merged company? That's your idea of a fair settlement? It's more complicated than that. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. There are things happening that you don't know about, things that could hurt a lot of people, including you. Like the $1 million life insurance policy you took out on me 6 months ago? Was that part of the plan too, Jackson? If I wouldn't cooperate with the divorce, was there a backup plan to make me disappear? The blood drained from his face. What? No. That policy was William's idea. He has them for all his executive spouses. I never thought. I would never. I don't know what to believe anymore. The man I thought I married would never have betrayed me this way, would never have plotted behind my back to leave me, would never have continued trying for a baby while getting another woman pregnant. Jackson stared at me for a long moment. What do you want, Chastity? I took a deep breath, the moment I had been waiting for. I want the truth, Jackson. All of it. I want you to tell me exactly what's been happening at TechVision, what William Thompson has been doing, and what role you've played in it. And I want you to come clean about all the marital assets you've hidden. And if I do that, then maybe we can discuss a settlement that doesn't leave me with nothing while you walk away with millions. He seemed to be weighing his options. Finally, he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. William has been embezzling from TechVision for years. Over $20 million diverted to shell companies and offshore accounts. When I became CFO, I found discrepancies in the books. He offered me a choice: join him or be framed for the missing funds. So you chose to become a criminal. I chose survival. And yes, once I was in, I took advantage of the situation. We've been setting up the company for acquisition for the past year. The merger with Meridian would make the leadership team incredibly wealthy, and all the accounting irregularities would be buried in the transition. And Amanda? A flash of what might have been genuine emotion crossed his face. That part wasn't planned. She and I did develop real feelings for each other. When she got pregnant, William saw an opportunity to bind me closer to the family, to ensure my loyalty. By discarding your wife of 8 years. Yes. For the first time, he looked truly ashamed. The prenup was William's idea, too. He had his people create it and backdate it. I never thought you'd find out. I nodded slowly, feeling strangely calm. One more thing, Jackson. There's something you should know. I paused, meeting his eyes directly. I'm pregnant, too. His face went blank with shock. What? I found out the morning of your divorce call. After years of trying, we're finally going to have a baby. I was going to surprise you that evening. Jackson slumped in his chair, the full weight of his actions seemingly hitting him at once. Chastity. Save it. I stood up, gathering my purse. I've heard everything I need to hear. I'll have my lawyer contact Martin Blackwell to discuss a revised settlement. One that reflects the truth about our marital assets and your activities at TechVision. Wait, what are you going to do? I looked down at him, feeling a strange mix of pity and resolve. I'm going to do what you should have done when you discovered William Thompson's fraud. The right thing. As I walked out of the coffee shop, I heard him call my name, but I didn't look back. In my purse, the recording device had captured every incriminating word. Within hours, it would be in the hands of the district attorney and SEC investigators. Jackson's confession would be the final piece they needed to move forward with charges against everyone involved. That night, I sat in Taylor's living room, exhausted but oddly at peace. It's done, I told her. Jackson confessed to everything, the fraud, the fake prenup, his relationship with Amanda. And I told him about the baby. How did he take it? Like a man seeing his entire world collapse. Which, I suppose, it is. I rested my hand on my stomach. I never thought things would end this way. They haven't ended yet, Taylor reminded me. The legal proceedings are just beginning. She was right, of course. The next day, the SEC and FBI executed search warrants at TechVision's offices and the homes of William Thompson and several other executives, including the apartment Jackson had rented. Computers were seized, files confiscated. The news hit the financial press immediately. TechVision's stock plummeted, and the Meridian merger was put on indefinite hold. 3 days later, I received a text message from Jackson. "Can we talk? Please." Against Patricia's advice, I agreed to meet him one last time, in a public park with plenty of witnesses. He looked even worse than before, his expensive suit replaced by jeans and a rumpled button-down shirt. "They've frozen all my accounts," he said without preamble. "Criminal charges are being filed tomorrow. Martin Blackwell has dropped me as a client and is cooperating with investigators to save himself. William Thompson is claiming I masterminded everything." "I'm sorry it's come to this," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "I deserve it. All of it." He looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. "But our baby doesn't deserve to have a father in prison. Is there anything you can do? Any way you could tell them I cooperated?" I studied him for a long moment. The man I had loved for 8 years, now reduced to begging for mercy. "I'll speak to Jared about your cooperation, but I can't make any promises. What you and William did affected a lot of people. Shareholders, employees, their families." "I know." He hesitated. "And Amanda? What about her?" "She's scared. She didn't know about the fraud. She's innocent in all this." I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped me. "Innocent?" "She knew you were married, Jackson. She participated in your deception for months. But no, I don't wish her ill. Or her baby." Jackson nodded, looking down at his hands. "I've lost everything that matters. My career, my freedom, and most importantly, you. I didn't realize what I had until it was too late." "Sometimes that's how we learn the most important lessons," I said softly. "I need to go now. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce proceedings." As I walked away, I heard him call after me one more time. "Chastity! For what it's worth, I really did love you." I didn't turn around, but I felt a tear slip down my cheek as I whispered to myself, "It wasn't worth enough, Jackson. It wasn't worth enough." 6 months later, I sat in the hospital delivery room, my sister Taylor holding my hand as contractions came one after another. The journey to this moment had been unlike anything I could have imagined. When I first saw that positive pregnancy test, a day before my world fell apart. "You're doing great, Chastity," the doctor encouraged. One more big push. With a final exhausting effort, my daughter entered the world, her angry cries filling the room. As the nurse placed her on my chest, tiny and perfect with a shock of dark hair, all the pain and betrayal of the past months seemed to recede. In that moment, there was only this new life, this miracle we had created despite everything. "Hello, little one," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I'm your mom." Taylor wiped her own tears away. "She's beautiful, Chastity. Absolutely perfect." The legal aftermath of Jackson's betrayal had been swift and severe. He had ultimately cooperated fully with authorities, providing detailed evidence against William Thompson and others involved in the fraud. In exchange, prosecutors had recommended a reduced sentence, 5 years, instead of the potential 15 to 20 he might have faced. The divorce had been finalized 3 months after Jackson's arrest. With the prenuptial agreement proven fraudulent and Jackson's hiding of assets fully documented, the settlement had been heavily in my favor. I received our house, 70% of all marital assets, including those he had tried to hide, and substantial alimony. More importantly, I had secured full custody of our child, with provisions for Jackson to have supervised visitation after his release from prison. William Thompson had not fared as well. Facing multiple federal charges and abandoned by his legal team, he was looking at potentially decades in prison. His daughter Amanda had given birth 2 months before me, a baby boy who would grow up rarely seeing his grandfather and with his father behind bars for the early years of his life. In an unexpected turn of events, I had been approached by TechVision's board of directors. With the company in crisis and desperately trying to salvage its reputation, they had offered me a position as interim head of compliance. My background in healthcare administration, combined with my insider knowledge of the fraud and my clear record of integrity, made me a valuable asset in their recovery efforts. After careful consideration and many discussions with Taylor, I had accepted the position. The salary was excellent, the hours flexible enough to accommodate my pregnancy and new motherhood, and the opportunity to help rebuild the company that had been central to our lives for so many years felt right somehow. "Miss Lawson?" A nurse peeked into the recovery room where I was resting with my newborn daughter. "There's someone here asking to see you." "A Sandra Thompson?" I looked up in surprise. "Amanda's mother?" Taylor tensed beside me. "Do you want me to send her away?" I considered for a moment. "No, it's all right. I'll see her." Sandra Thompson entered hesitantly, looking older and more drawn than I remembered from company functions. She carried a small gift bag and stopped a respectful distance from the bed. "Congratulations," she said softly. "Amanda told me you were due around this time. I hope you don't mind my coming." "It's fine," I replied, shifting my sleeping daughter slightly in my arms. "This is unexpected, though," Sandra nodded. "I wanted to come in person to say how deeply sorry I am for everything that happened. What William and Jackson did to the company, to the employees and shareholders, and especially what they did to you, was unforgivable. Thank you for saying that." She placed the gift bag on the side table. "Just some things for the baby, and—" She hesitated. "Amanda asked me to give you this." From her purse, she withdrew an envelope and handed it to me. I gave it to Taylor, unable to open it while holding the baby. "She's devastated by her role in all this," Sandra continued. "She didn't know about the financial crimes, but she knew Jackson was married. She's been doing a lot of soul-searching since everything fell apart." Taylor had opened the envelope and was scanning the letter inside. "It's an apology," she said to me. "A long one. And she's asking if you'd consider allowing the half-siblings to know each other someday." I looked down at my daughter, thinking about the baby boy who shared her father. 2 innocent children born into a complicated legacy of betrayal and deceit. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Not now, but someday perhaps." Sandra nodded gratefully. "That's more than we have any right to ask. Thank you for seeing me. I'll leave you to rest now." After she left, Taylor handed me the letter. "Are you really considering letting your daughter have a relationship with Amanda's son?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I do know I don't want my daughter's life to be defined by her father's mistakes or by bitterness. When she's older, she'll have questions about her father and his other family. I want to be able to tell her I made decisions based on what was best for her, not on my own hurt feelings." Taylor squeezed my hand. "You're going to be an amazing mother." 6 months later, life had found a new rhythm. I had returned to work at TechVision, where the company was slowly rebuilding under new leadership. My daughter, whom I had named Hope, was thriving. Jackson wrote regularly from prison, letters I saved in a box for Hope to read when she was old enough to understand. I had ultimately agreed to send Amanda photos of Hope and accepted photos of her son in return. It was a small step, but one that felt right. The children were innocent, and someday they might want to know their half-sibling. The most unexpected development had been my friendship with Peter. the accountant who had first alerted me to the financial irregularities. After the dust settled, we had stayed in touch, initially discussing the ongoing restructuring at TechVision, then gradually moving to more personal topics. He had become a steady presence in my life, never pushing for more than friendship, but clearly caring deeply for both me and Hope. One evening, as we sat on my porch, swing the same one where Jackson and I had shared our last happy meal together, Peter asked the question he'd been dancing around for weeks. Would you consider having dinner with me sometime? Not as colleagues or friends, but as a date? I looked at him thoughtfully. You know my life is complicated. I have a baby, an ex-husband in prison, and enough emotional baggage to fill a cargo plane. He smiled. I know exactly who you are, Chastity. I watched you face the worst betrayal imaginable and emerge stronger. I've seen your integrity, your resilience, and your capacity for forgiveness. That's exactly why I'm asking. Looking at his kind, honest face, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time, hope for a future different than the one I had planned, but potentially just as meaningful. Yes, I said simply. I'd like that. As I watch Hope sleeping peacefully in her crib tonight, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. What began with a devastating phone call led to the discovery of my own strength and resilience. I learned that sometimes the greatest betrayals can lead to unexpected blessings, that endings can become beginnings, and that there is always hope for renewal even in the darkest moments. The truth is, we never really know what's waiting around the corner in life, whether it's heartbreak or joy, betrayal or loyalty. What matters is how we face those unexpected turns, the courage we find when we need it most, and our willingness to keep our hearts open despite the risks. If you're facing your own moment of betrayal or loss, know that this isn't the end of your story, it's just a difficult chapter. Your strength may surprise you, as mine did me. Trust yourself. Surround yourself with people who truly support you, and remember that the darkest moments often come just before the dawn of something new and beautiful in your life. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Or faced a challenge that revealed strength you didn't know you had? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this message of hope and resilience today. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I wish you strength and courage on your own path forward.